Do you want to create a phishing website like this? Do you want to create a Facebook login page like this? Then this guide is for you. I will show you how hackers create phishing websites using laptop. I found this video and I decided to share it with you guys. This is the same type of phishing page that I used in my last demonstration, where I showed you what it looks like when someone actually falls victim to the attack, as well as what it looks like for the hacker who received the clear text username and password. So before I go into detail about how to create that phishing website, let me just do a quick example of what it is we can expect to see. So first thing, I'm going to use tail, and I'm going to keep a lookout on this txt file. So there's nothing in there at the moment. But by using -F, I'm able to keep that open and let me know if anything changes to that file. So now, if I were to actually put in like email here and just throw a password in, we see the same thing we saw before. This time we actually got a bunch of junk in here. But we see a session password, and it's kind of hard to read. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to kill this tail command. And instead, I'm just going to do a quick edit on loot.txt. It'll make it a little bit easier for us to scroll. So we're looking at the session password. And if we scroll up, we can look at the session key. So this is the end result. This is what we're trying to get to, and yeah, I guess let's just show you how we got there. The first piece to the puzzle is understanding what's actually happening. And there's two files that, I guess technically there are three files that we're really reliant on in making this attack successful. The first is that page we go to, which is signed in HTML. We need to be able to have a page that looks like LinkedIn. It's going to be convincing enough for someone to actually try to sign in with their username and password. The second piece is what happens when someone enters an email, a password, and they click sign in. Well, that's the second part. And we handle that through a PHP file called captcha.php. And so essentially, instead of sending whatever they type into LinkedIn, we want to send that to capture.php. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. If we look at capture.php, we've got a bunch of code here. And don't worry, you don't need to be intimidated. In fact, I just pulled this right off of a Google search. So it looks complex, but it's really not. All that we're really doing is for each post request that gets put out to that website, which when you type in a username and password field, that's typically through a post request for each one of those, we're going to take the value and we're going to throw that into a variable. And then we're just going to write that variable out to the screen, which actually is going to open up a text file called loot.txt. And it's going to write that variable in dilute.txt. So that's why if we keep an eye on loot.txt, as soon as someone types in a username and password, this script gets executed and it's going to write whatever they type into those different variables. Whatever the value is that they type in, that's going to show here in dilute.txt. And that's how we can grab the username and password field. The other cool thing here is at the end, it's going to display invalid email password, try again, and then it's going to refresh the page and send them right back to sign into HTML. So that's what the PHP code is doing. But what about the actual code itself that looks like a fake LinkedIn? So let me quit here and I'll show you how hackers are doing it. So I'm just going to open up a browser and I'm going to go to linkedin.com. And we're at the page. I'll go to the sign section and check that out. It looks exactly like what we were seeing before. Now this time, we're actually on linkedin.com. But what if we right-click and we go to view the page source? What happens is we actually can see a full list of all the code that makes up that web page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control-A, that's going to select everything, and then I'm just going to copy this code. And if we copy that down, I can actually come back here and I make a new text file. And I'm just going to call this example .html. It's going to be our example HTML file. And then I'm just going to paste all this code in. And it might take a second to actually paste that because, there's quite a bit of stuff there. And look at that. It's terrible. Imagine actually having to do much with this. The good news is there's not a lot we need to do. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to search for, Really, this is actually the only thing we need to do is I'm going to search for action equals. And this is the only part that matters. So action equals. What this is saying is when we submit our username and password, we call on this action equals. And then we're actioning, or I guess we're calling on this remote file. This is a file that LinkedIn controls login submission, but instead of sending it to login, submit. What I'd rather do is send it to my captcha.php because I don't have access to LinkedIn's login submission. Plus, I don't want it to be sent to LinkedIn. I want it to be sent to me. So now that we have our own file here, let me pull this back up. Just exit out of here and then we'll search for it. Action equals. There we are. And now I'm going to replace it, just deleting that. And I'm going to instead say action equals capture.php. So this is the part that I modified. I'm just going to go ahead and save my changes. And that's really about it. Honestly, there's not much more to it. I have a web server that I'm hosting on my machine, but I've got all the files I need. I guess the other piece that's important is we need to create a text. And if I open this up, you'll see I actually have quite a bit of files in here. I already have text created, but if you don't, then you're going to want to create a looped text inside your web directory, which I'm just using the default directory. And I'm using Apache to host up the web server on my box, so I have everything in place here. All I have to do is actually go out to the IP address of my machine. And then we can go to that example.html page we just created. And check it out. There we are. And again, when we type anything in, that's going to call on captcha.php. And then it's going to populate loop text. So, just like before, we can monitor the contents of loop text. We already have a bunch of stuff in there from earlier. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to delete out what we have in loop.txt. I just cleared all the contents there and then. Now we can do another quick tail on this guy. Nothing's in there. Now we're looking at example HTML, and now we can type in, the second example, I guess. I don't know. Second at example.com, write a password to go. Yeah, and we're getting something here that's really, really making it tough. And this is actually part of, here, I'll close this out. We'll do a quick edit of loot. So this is one of the negatives of using that PHP file that I was talking about is that PHP, that captured PHP. It's grabbing the contents of every single variable and it's throwing it back. So we have a variable here called ID string and parent page key page instance. All of these things are set by LinkedIn. They're set by all this code that we just blindly stole. All this code is actually making these different variables here. And if we didn't want all that, we could edit or capture that PHP file to show us just the session key and just the session password. But each website is going to have different variable names. And so I like to grab them all and then just manually shift through, the stuff that I don't need. And until I find the stuff that I do. So that's really it. That's kind of how attackers are doing it now. I'd love to get any feedback from you if you have any questions about what we just did. Throw them in the comments section. I'd be happy to try to help answer them. And then, if this was something that was all at all interesting to you, smash that like button for me. Hit the subscribe button because I'll be doing more stuff like this. And, yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye for now.